Hello and salutations, it's me, Sal-T. Welcome back to 2 Cents Toys, and today, no, I'm not going over Bespin Luke Skywalker. I've already done that. As the title says, I'm going to be customizing him. This Luke Skywalker was picked up for Michael French over at Retroblasting. Go subscribe to them if you haven't already. If you somehow found my channel without finding them first, then I don't know what's up with YouTube, but definitely go check them out. But someone beat me to the punch on that, and he got a couple already, so with his blessing, I'm going to go ahead and open it up. We're going to customize it, and then I'll send it off to Michael, and maybe it'll show up in a live stream. Who knows? But the plan currently is to take this Luke and turn him into a post-duel Luke. So we're going to remove the hand, put some pink around the eyes, maybe go over a better wash on the body because it doesn't look dirty enough to me. Maybe I'll do some weathering on the weapons. Should be fun. I'm not going to time-lapse everything, just because I had a couple subscribers ask me to kind of go over the techniques that I use instead of just time-lapsing it all, so that's probably what you're going to get, and we'll just, do cuts to the finished product. So, sit back and enjoy. Alright, first, I have a small little kind of saucepan. I bought a really small one specifically for boiling figures, so this is just the one that I use. Just put some water in it. It doesn't have to be a whole bunch, and then you just wait for it to boil. This is what we call the boil and pop method. I'm doing the boil and pop first because I'm going to be popping off this wrist, and then I'm going to be doing some painting. So if I do the painting first and then try to boil, there's a good chance that the boiling water is going to wipe off all the paint. So you kind of have to think about what you're going to do and then do it in a, kind of a good order. While we're waiting on this water to finish boiling, I like to use these kind of long-handled pliers, so that way I can sit at a distance to boil the figure, or at least boil the part that I need, not having to stick my hand down in there. So it's not quite boiling yet, but that's about as hot as we're going to need it. And we don't have to boil the whole figure. It's going to hold on to him by his ankle, dip his hand down there into the water, just submerge it just enough to get it soft. Unlike, Marvel Legends and a lot of other ones, these hands really aren't meant to pop out. So we'll let him sit here couple seconds longer, and then I'm going to pull the hand right out. So that's probably good enough. Let's feel the hand. Oh yeah, it's nice and soft. So I'm just going to grab the hand right here and pop it right out. See how long that peg is? And now I'm going to shut off the oven, or I guess the stove, because that's all I need it for. Alright, so since we've removed the hand, which you can see that mushroom peg about halfway down, which is what keeps it from being pulled out normally. So now I have to decide how I'm going to handle the wrist. I could always fill it in with Milliput and kind of paint it, or I could just leave it as is, but to me that looks unfinished. What I'm tempted to do, I'm tempted to fill this in with Milliput and then drill 2 different holes and use one of these, which the official term, I don't know, it's some kind of like Q-tip like thing. And these are about the right diameter. If I were to kind of put them in there, like, cut 2 little segments, I could drill 2 little holes and make it like, forearm bones sticking out a little bit. So that's always an option, but haven't really decided what I'm going to do just yet. Of course, we're going to paint the eyes, which I think we'll do after we do a wash, because again, I don't want to get the paint wet and have it start running and smearing everywhere. But I have to decide if I'm going to do a dark gray, because that'd be keeping more in line with the costume, because a black is just going to turn everything dark, and not everything needs to be washed. Like the back is okay, like here on the arm is pretty okay, but I don't know, this should be a lot dirtier in the front. I also want to weather up the weapons a little bit. I want to bring some of the black out underneath there, make it look like it's been used before at least. Probably do that as well. Okay, I decided to weather the weapons first, so I've got some 800 grit sandpaper here, and a diamond file that is pyramid shaped, or triangle shaped, or however you want to say it, prism shaped I guess would be the most accurate. So I want to kind of weather some of the silver here, but I'm going to try the sandpaper first because this is a much higher grit. I'd rather start out, soft grit and work my way to heavier grit, because if you start out really heavy and you gouge it, then you can't really go backwards. I'd have to get out silver paint and hope I didn't damage the integrity of the plastic. So do some quick kind of rubs around it. It's not really doing much. Okay, we're getting a little headway here. So what I want to do is weather the barrel mostly. Right there at the end, which I know I'm kind of doing it backwards. I'm dragging the item over the sandpaper instead of the paper over the item. You can see we're getting a little bit, not a whole bunch, but I want to make the top of this completely black, so I'll use the heavy grit on that to try and get rid of the silver on top. We're making a little bit of progress there. That way I can paint the very tip of this black so it looks like it's, real, or more real, I guess. Do a couple drags along these cones here, because we might be able to go over this with a black and kind of, fill in some of these gaps that I'm making here by sanding. Kind of weathered it up, you see all that? I think gives a little character makes it a little older. Should probably go over another pass here on this side though, because this side, you know, kind of bounce it out a little bit. I think that aged it up a little bit better. Give it some more character. I might be able to go around the edge there with a little bit of silver and paint that black. Of course, I'll have to do black first, then silver. That's another thing. If you're going to paint, do it in layers. You know, dark on the bottom and then go lighter, because if you do light on the bottom and go dark, it's just going to cover it completely. So before you start painting things, kind of know what you want to do. Like I think I want to go back and put a little bit of silver on this edge and then still have the inside of the barrel be black, which means I need to do black first and then go over the silver on top. That's another little tidbit. Also, I was looking at this hand, and I think instead of using milliput, I think what I might do is kind of cut right here at the bottom of this disc and then wedge it back into the forearm and then drill my holes there. You know, that way I don't have to worry about using milliput because that stuff gets kind of sticky. Alright, so using some, what is that, ceram coat, just satin, it's just black. I'm not going to pull out a paint tray for this because I'm just using the brush and, you know, dabbing it right there on the top. I'll just open it up, kind of squeeze the paint towards the top if I can. Just pull some paint right there from the cap. Let's paint over the top here. Now we have a black interior barrel, and I have a silver paint pen, so I'll probably just carefully go around the edge, and that'll be that. Because I don't think this weathering actually needs a wash. I think that looks just fine the way it is. Has a nice patina to it. On the topic of sanding, I think that belt needs a little bit, little weathering there on the buckle. So I'm going to take my 800 grit again. Oh, I'm actually going to tear a corner off my 800 grit because I don't need the whole sheet. I'm going to do some kind of scoring here on the front of the belt to age it. That looks better already. I need to do a little bit in the middle and some on the sides here. Now his belt buckle is aged. So, I mean, when you look at it up close like that, it looks like I just went wham. But in person, when the light hits it differently, it looks really great. But now, since I've sanded just a little bit more, I'm probably going to go over this belt with a black wash anyway, and then I'll probably use a gray on the rest of the body because black is going to kind of drown everything out. This is the silver paint pen. It's a painter's. What I like to do is, I mean, you got to shake them. Since the tip on this is too wide, that's why I like to use these. I just tilt it to where the paint starts to kind of run out a little bit, and then I roll this around the tip just to collect some of that excess silver paint, and then I use one of these for detail. You know, this isn't like the fastest method on the planet by any stretch. I'm sure I'm taking way too many extra steps. You know, sometimes it helps. Now I can go back over that belt. See how much weathered it is now? I think that's a little bit better. And it dries pretty quick too, so I think that ages it a little bit better. If I put them side by side to my personal one, you can see the difference. And now, we'll do a little bit more sanding. Kind of buff it out a little bit. There we go. Perfect. Alright, now I know I probably should have done the wash first and then done that, but, you know, we all make mistakes even after we tell you not to do them. That's part of life, I suppose. So what I might try and do is I might try and do a dry brush on this holster instead of doing a wash and see what happens with that. A dry brush is literally where you just take a dry brush just like this. You put a little paint on it like this. So you take some black paint, and I'm just going to use my sandpaper here, and you try to get as much of the excess off as possible, just like this, to where it barely leaves any marks. So that way you just quickly kind of go back and forth on stuff. You see how it kind of ages that a little bit? See that? So it ages it a little bit without being too heavy in any one particular spot. And I think that's going to work better than the wash will. See how weathered that is now? Very easy technique, but it's also, you can mess it up, you know, and that does happen. Mistakes happen, you know, like that. I put way too much on. That's why I just wipe it off with my finger. And we keep going. And now it's aged. Compare that to the bright brown that we just had, and I think that looks a lot better. I'm beginning to wonder if maybe I could take the gray and do the same thing without having to do a wash, because I think that might be more effective. The thing about that is it's one of those things where if you do it, you know, it's going to be hard to wash off. So it's kind of like you have to go with your gut, and once you do it, you got to do it, if that makes sense. I guess I'll do a test spot here on the back and see if gray or black works better. At least that way I can take a wet rag and wash it off up there if I need to. So we'll try that next. What I decided to do, and I did this off camera, so let me show you. So these hands don't have like a peg you can pop out like the elbows or the knees on a lot of figures. So, and I've already cut the mushroom part off, but I basically took my X-Acto knife, which has a lot of milliput on it from a different custom that I'm doing, and I went down each side, which had that in the middle of it, so you just pop that out. The mushroom was connected there, and I already cut that, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some super glue and I'm going to put a little bit there at the opening. I'm going to just put that down in there. And what a lot of people do, like when you want to pop off knees, you do that boil and pop I showed you earlier, and you'll submerge whatever you need. And then if you push on that peg, or I guess you'll push on this side, but you'll push that peg out and you can pull the whole, the shin off or whatever. I like to use a handcuff key from work, and I use this is what you double lock handcuffs with, which is what keeps them from closing further. So basically I'll put some super glue down in there, and I'll take that and I'll push it down in, and then that'll be flush. I'm going to paint over it anyway, but at least that way I don't have to worry about using Milliput. I think that'll work out great. And this way, even if I end up pushing this too far in, then I'll just fill it in with Milliput anyway, I guess. But I'm trying to avoid using that because drilling through Milliput is going to be difficult. Put a little drop. There we go. Put too much on. That's okay, because like I said, I'm going to paint over it anyway. So let me use this end. It's wider so I can push it in initially. There we go. That should work great. And wipe away the excess. There we go. I mean, it's sticking out a little bit further than I would want. Let me try and push that in just a little bit further. I know I'm getting greedy, which I always say, if it's enough, it's enough. I know I'm getting greedy, which historically speaking, doesn't end well for me. There we go. I'll wait for that to dry. But since it's in there, let's try these two different methods with two different colors. So what I'm going to do is first I'm going to use the black and try a dry brush here on his back to see if I like that color more. And then I've also got my gray Anitas, and I'll try that on the other side. So the difference between a dry brush and a wash, a dry brush, if you go over it, it's really just going to kind of catch on edges and things that are raised, where a wash does the opposite. You kind of thin it with some water, and then that lets it run down into the details. It doesn't really catch on the surface so much, so they kind of serve two different purposes. So I'm thinking a dry brush might work better because it's a lot of surface, kind of dirt and grime on him instead of kind of the sunken sort of stuff. I'm going to do 1 and 1, see if I like it. If I don't, I'll just wash it off, then I guess I'll go with a wash. Alright, first let's try black. Let's see here. That doesn't look too bad. I think I might not even have to try gray because I kind of like the way that looks. But I'm going to try my Anita's gray and see if I like it. So this is the black on this side, this is the gray on this side. Looks about the same. I don't know which I like more. I think I like the gray more. It looks more natural, and I might hit it with black in certain areas to kind of really saturate it. But I'm going to go wash this off with a wet paper towel or a kitchen towel, however you want to say it, and then we'll come back to it. Just a couple things I did off camera. I got rid of the 4 that was on his blaster and painted over that. And you can see some of the edge work is now silver. So I kind of dry brushed that a little bit, aged it. And I also sanded down the cuff a little bit on his hand. I'm going to try and make it as flush as I can, because it wouldn't make sense for his stump to be behind the sleeve. So that way I can sand that down a little bit more and, maybe put some black on it because it's been seared. Do that real quick. I went ahead and put my paint in my tray so I don't have to keep dipping out of the bottle because I decided to go with gray. Just kind of sand on the cuff a little bit just to make it even with the stump. There, that's about even. Now we're going to clean up the edges, kind of smooth that out a little bit. So that way it doesn't, have that kind of cone look to it, if that makes any kind of sense. Because if all you do is file out, eventually the stuff kind of goes off to the side, make it look like it was made that way. It doesn't have to be clean either, because we're going to go over it with paint. So there we go. Bob's your uncle. I think that looks great. Going to do the dry brush technique. So you get your paint on your brush, dab it dry, because you don't want to hit any major spots of paint because then it just smears. There, that ought to work. You can see how we're already darkening the back doing that. See? Look at that. I think that's grand. Hit the joints, of course. You don't want those to stand out. See how much darker his arm is compared to his body now? That's exactly what we want. And the good part about doing dry brush versus, let's hit it up here in the chest pretty heavy. And before I cut myself off, the good part about doing a dry brush versus a wash is that water isn't dripping everywhere. You don't have to have any toilet paper or wash rag or whatever you would use to dry it either. So it's a much faster process. It also dries faster. I mean, clearly it's not wet, so it's going to dry faster, but felt like it needed to be said. Alright, I'm not really looking at the camera while I do this. I'm kind of invested in what I'm doing directly in front of me. That's exactly what I was talking about. I didn't dab off my brush first. So now I have a big old glob that I have to go wash off. Or, if you're, me, just wipe it off with your thumb, because you're going to wash your hands anyway. So that's why normally I would wear gloves, but you've seen in the other videos doing customs that my gloves tend to make the, oh, see, I did it again. My gloves tend to mess with the brightness on its own, so I kind of forewent gloves for this video. Feels more like a live stream while I'm filming it because I'm just kind of talking to myself. You know, I was asked to not do a time lapse, so this is what you get. This is me talking to myself a whole bunch. Gotta hit his butt. Can't forget that. See, I was a little too much on the knee, but I'll wipe it off with my thumb here in a second. See, just like that. And see, there they are side by side. You can see this one's significantly dirtier. Off to a good start. Now, I think this might be the same shade of gray. We'll hit the feet anyway, just in case. Now, the hard part is going to be the face, because I'm going to darken the hair a little bit, because the scene that I'm talking about is after the hand's gone, and he's got that kind of burn on his face, so I'm going to have to come up with a pink for that, and I'm going to have to make the hair darker, because it almost turns brown in that scene. And I need to hit the chest one more time, because that's not quite dark enough. There. That's what I'm talking about. Hit him on the sides, because I missed that too. Alright, and gotta hit the collar. Definitely gotta hit the collar, because that needs some kind of character on it. Oh yeah. That looks a lot better. Looks better. Way, way, way better. So there's almost no paint applied to it. There we go. See? And sometimes you miss spots, like not even paying attention to it. There we go. And see, that's the good part about a dry brush versus a wash, is that you can see exactly what you've hit already, because with a wash, you don't know until it all kind of, you know, until you wipe off all the water and see what hit and what didn't. Because some spots don't soak it in, other spots soak up too much. Dry brush, you know exactly what you're hitting when you hit it. The only annoying thing is having to do the points of articulation to try to get up in there, so there's no breaks in the color really. That looks 1,000 times better already, I think. I'm probably going to hit this with red, like just like a light spackling of red, and then go over it with the gray and black, so that way it looks like a wound, but it's not bleeding, because we know lightsabers cauterize unless you're Ponda Baba, in which case, you know, it bleeds. But I think that's a terrific start. And if I'm feeling frisky, I might take some Milliput and make a little cone thing to go over his hand, if I'm feeling frisky. But I don't know yet. Alright, so I think I'm going to do the hair next, and the stump at the same time, so I'm going to be using a red on both. So I have some Anita's acrylic again. It's kind of a dark brown. Officially, it's called earth brown. I'm going to put some of that in the hair because his hair gets very dark in that scene. Oh, that might not be dark enough. I might have to add a little bit of black to that. Just a drop of black. Ooh, that might be too much. There, I'll put it on the side. That way I can dip black, mix and brown, dip black, mix and brown until I get it just right. That's how I like to do it. So, dab in the black, just a little bit, mix it in. Might have to add just a little bit more. I'll put the drop there on the side, because it's always good to add a little bit at a time instead of, you know, a big glob, because you can always add more if you do a little bit, but if you put too much, then you pretty much wasted the whole paint. I mean, you could put more brown in or put some white in, but then you're gonna it's gonna be a mixing act to get it right. So, but that I think is gonna be good. Try to get as much of it off as possible. And let's hit his hair with it. Kind of change brush patterns, because how his hair goes off to the side, if you do a dry brush on the side like that, all it does is hit kind of the top and leaves the bright underneath, which is okay, I guess. But if you really need it saturated, you got to go with the grooves. That'll kind of fill it in where you need it filled in. Actually, I might be able to use some of this and get it really thin on the brush. Kind of hit his face with it a little bit, kind of dirty him up, and then kind of wipe it off. See, now his face is a little dirty. See how that works? So hit him on the face a little bit more, kind of saturate it deep, and then wipe it off, because that'll dirty up his face quite a bit. Let's hit him on the throat with it. Let's probably hit his hand too, huh? If his face is got to be dirty, it stands to reason that his hands would be dirty. See? Now his hands are dirty. There's our difference. See how much darker his hair is just by doing that? This is turning out fantastic. You know what? I'm feeling dangerous. Let me hit the bottoms of his boots just a little bit in brown, just to see what happens. Because his feet wouldn't be clean, right? Because, you know, detail sometimes isn't my strong suit. Like, with this painting stuff, it can be. Like, when it comes to sculpting, I'm not so great at it just because I don't have the sculpting skill. I do what I can with sculpting. It's easier for me to sculpt onto something that already exists than it is to sculpt freehand. So, we'll see how that turns out. This is great. Just hitting his boots with it a little bit, dirty him up. Perfect. Perfect, perfect. Alright. I think what I'm going to do for the red, I have a red painter's pen just like the silver one. So I think I'm going to give this a few shakes. Probably what I'll do is use the other end of the silver one, put some red up here around his eye so he gets that burn. I think it's from the carbonite chamber. Pretty sure that's where it comes from, so he gets his burn on his face. So I'll probably use this to put the red around his eye and all that and up under his hair. And then put some red down in here, then go over it with a gray, and then hit it with a black, and we should be done. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to try it on the stump first before I do it on the face, because these painter pens are a lot harder to get the paint off, and I really don't want to put like a big glob on here and then not like the way it looks. So I think I'm going to try it on the hand first, and then I'll do the face. Also off camera, I got rid of the 4 because numbers are dumb on weapons. Just like the silver, I'm going to use the other end and do the same method. Kind of soak up some of the red here, and we'll see how it looks. This is a very bright red, and the wound on the face is red, but it's like a purple red almost. I don't snap the cap back on completely because I am going to need it, but I do put it there enough. But I do put it on enough to where it's not going to fall off and roll around and make my station all red. Because I just flipped it over to make it all white again after being splotchy for a while. Because again, we're going to hit this with a gray and then a black, so a lot of this is going to get covered over, including the stump. It's going to only have a couple flecks of red in it when we're done. I think I might like that. I'm not certain. Alright, I think that red is gonna work. So here goes nothing. Gotta hit it above the eyebrow, down here into the well of the eye. Try not to get it on the eye. That's the trick. That's why we're using the small little tip end here. Try to get it up there into the hair as much as possible. We'll hit it with a wipe, kind of weather it down a little bit. I think that looks almost perfect. And then the trick is to kind of drag it down a little bit and make it look like it's, not painted, like it happened organically. I think that is going to work perfectly. Now we're going to hit that with some gray and some black. And I think I might pull out the milliput to make that cast around the hand, but make it so it can go on and off the wrist. I think that's what we're going to do next. And what do we do, boys and girls? We always do the dark and then the light, right? Get a little bit of this. And this poor sandpaper, but I ain't using it for much else. I don't do much sanding these days. So we'll hit the cuff with it. Quick little passes. It's hard to see, I know, but trust me, it looks a lot better in person. Really got to hit that cuff so the sanding doesn't show up. Hit it with the gray, because we always do dark and then light, right? Do a couple little passes with the gray. There we go. There. You see that? How we still have the red on the stump a little bit? I think I might darken this up just a little bit. I know, I'm getting greedy, and whenever I get greedy, it almost never works out for me because I put too much, just because it doesn't look quite perfect enough. Oop, hoo hoo hoo! He almost nosedived right there to the paint. That would have been a bad day, being this close to the end. Alright, here we go. That's exactly what that needed. Okay, so again, there's the stump. You see a little bit better. Cleaned up the face just a smidge off camera. I'm going to try and do the cover for his arm. When I sculpt anything, I use milliput, which is a sculpting epoxy, so it's very sticky. It's used for modeling, sculpting, ceramic tiles, PVC, all that kind of stuff. Because it's sticky, like if I were to mold it around the arm and then let it dry, it's going to stick to the arm. And then it's hard like cement after that. Like it's not going to come off. So what I do when I have to do those types of things, I take the aluminum foil. I'm not going to need this much, obviously, or definitely not this much. What I do is I wrap it around, or I put it on whatever it is I'm going to use, and then I put the milliput over that, and then I'll take it off, put it back on a couple times until I know it's loose enough that I'm going to be able to take it off, put it back on, all that kind of stuff. So I'll probably sculpt it, put it on there, let it dry overnight, and then do some painting on it, and then that will be the end of it. Probably only going to need this much, I'd imagine. Kind of have to eyeball these sorts of things. So I think this should work plenty. I might put another layer on, just in case. I've never tried to cut aluminum foil with scissors before, but there's a first time for everything. That worked really well, actually. I'll just make another layer like this. The best part is, like, if there's anything left at the back, because it's aluminum foil, I can just cut it off, once the milliput's done. So I think that will work out great. I'm making a mess of my workstation here. Now, milliput, it comes in 2 sticks, as you'll see. Got this at Hobby Lobby, which is the only place that I've seen it in stores. I'm sure you can get it other places, but I know for a fact I can get it at Hobby Lobby. So it comes in 2 sticks, right? And you're really supposed to wear gloves when you do this, but because it's sticky, it just sticks to my gloves when I try to do that, so I do it barehanded. And yeah, it's a little yellow. I've had this milliput for a while. So I've had the same 2 sticks for about a year and a half now. So, but you have to mix equal parts when you mix it. So, and I have a really bad habit of pinching off more than I need. So I think this is probably a good amount. So I'll go ahead and pull that off. Well, I like to actually twist. So that way it comes off clean and I don't end up stringing it out like cheese or something. Make the same here, or as close to same as I can get. Go ahead and twist that off. That looks about equal. And then you're gonna mix it together. But I'm gonna set that to the side before I mix it so I can put this back, because I don't want it to dry out, even though I'm sure it's probably well past its shelf life. You gotta mix it together. It says for about 4 minutes, but I just keep smashing it and rolling it in my fingers until I feel like it's all mixed up. But see, it's already turning my fingers white. See, it's already sticky. So that's the other thing. These fingerprints, if I touch him, it's gonna leave a white fingerprint. So I have to be really cognizant and careful on how I do this, or I'll have to do some repainting, which I really don't want to do, because I think it's almost perfect. Use fingers that you're not mixing, and then see how that flaps right there. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna push right here, and then wrap around, so that way it doesn't smear all over the place or get caught up on anything. So now that I've got it on there, bring it around, try to cover up as much as possible without having to make more, and try to keep it, you know, off the rest of the normal figure, but try to make it even at the same time. It's kind of, you know, it's an uphill battle. It's never easy, but at least it's on the aluminum foil and not the rest of the figure. And then I can always sand it down to make it even if I need to. But the question is, can I take it off his arm? Let's see what happens when I pull on it. Do that a few times, so that way I know I can pull it on and off relatively easily. You know, push it back on, kind of smooth out as much as I can. Alright, that's about as smooth as I can get it until it dries and I can sand it down a little bit. Do that a few times, make sure it comes on and off pretty easily. Now I have to find a place to set this down so it can dry. I like to use this little wood block that I have that I put nails in. This is where I'll put heads down or something that I'm working on while they dry. So this isn't touching the wood, or at least the milliput isn't touching the wood in any place. There's still aluminum foil. So that way I have a nail under it to keep it from falling over, and it's vertical, so that'll dry on its own. And that's all I'm going to be able to do for right now. Well, for me for right now. For you, it won't make a difference. It'll just be tacked on to the end of the video. But I'm going to wait for that to dry. It usually dries in about 4 hours, but I like to give it, you know, an overnight kind of thing to make sure that it's completely done. Then we'll come back, we'll do the tubes and the little block, and we'll paint those, and then it'll be done. Well, it's been overnight, and this is now solidified completely. So I checked already, and it slides on and off with no problem. So got that going for us. Now what I have to do is I'll have to get out the milliput again, make 3 black bands and some tubes to kind of connect here and there. File down and make it smooth, and I'll go ahead and cut this aluminum foil out that I'm not going to need anymore. It's good to leave a layer on the inside, just because, you know, I don't want to paint the inside because it's you know, it's white. You gotta be really careful because I don't want to get rid of too much. The thing about milliput is that even when it dries, it can leave, you know, white flecks behind. So that's why we leave the aluminum foil on the inside. So that way when we put it on and take it off, it doesn't turn his arm white. Because I've instructed other things doing that similar method and ended up having to go back and redo it because it kept leaving white on the, you know, figure's head or whatever. And take a little bit of sandpaper. This is going to take a while, so I might do a jump cut just to kind of speed this process along for you guys, because I don't think you want to sit here and watch me sand this down for the next probably 10 minutes. And that's probably about as good as that's going to get. But since we're here, let me go ahead, sand this down a little bit just to kind of smooth it out, you know, because I don't want my fingerprints all over it. Because that's really only the real advantage of wearing gloves when working with milliput is the lack of fingerprints. But whenever I wear gloves, it just makes the milliput stick to my gloves really bad, and then it makes it really hard to smooth stuff out. And I don't really have any tools for sculpting. I just kind of use a X-Acto knife and a pair of tweezers and hope for the best. Because I'm not trained as a sculptor by any means. I'm kind of learning this process as I go. That's probably as good as that's going to get. Because if I try to file too much, or I guess sand too much on these fingerprints, I risk sanding through it and going into the aluminum foil. So now let's pull this off. Well, can't use it now. I pulled too hard and I squished it. Looks pretty good so far. Alright, so you've seen me mix milliput before. Again, milliput, got it at a Hobby Lobby, it's like 14 bucks, but it's also lasted me quite a while. I learned about milliput from a channel called Toy Polloi, which if you're not subscribed to them and following them, Dave over there is a freaking wizard with restos and repro and all that kind of stuff, and doing bits and bobs with customs and all. I highly recommend him. We don't need as much milliput because we're just making a couple tubes and some bands. Again, I would time lapse all this, but someone asked me to show how I do things, so here we are. Alright, give it a twist, like M. Night Shyamalan. Yeah, that looks about equal. I mean, you could always take like a butter knife or something and cut exact measurements if you needed to, but I just kind of eyeball it. Hasn't steered me wrong yet, you know, knock on wood. So the only thing I really have to go on, other than existing figures, is a screenshot from after Luke gets rescued in the Millennium Falcon and he's talking to Vader. I think it's called Vader's Disappointment is the name of that scene. And he has his arms crossed, so I'm kind of shooting in the dark here and hoping for the best. We'll see. And this is definitely going to be way too much milliput. So, I mean, there's also, you know, there's photos of figures and toys. Like, I think the Hot Toys one might have the band, but I'm just doing a mixture of, I guess, whatever I think is correct and what looks correct. So what's easiest for tubes and like strands and stuff is to kind of just pinch and roll. See, my fingers are already turning white and getting sticky. So I'll lay that there because I'm going to use that in a second. And the good thing is, like I mentioned earlier, it takes a while for this stuff to really dry and set. So, you know, you can kind of take your time with sculpting and attaching. You know, those would be the two tubes. I mean, they're a little thick, but I'm going to roll them and get them really thin. Hope that that works. Box, where they attach. Well, no, I need to do the bands first, don't I? So for that, I do something a little different. So I'm going to pull this piece off. So I'm right here at the bottom of your screen. I make it flat, or as flat as I can. I take an X-Acto knife, and then I cut these bands out of the milliput just like that. And then hope that it peels up okay. And it's not really peeling okay. That did not work. So my normal method did not work. Okay. Because I think my X-Acto knife has too much milliput on it already. And it's kind of adhering to this board. Try again. If at first you do not succeed, try again. So sometimes this method works, sometimes it does not. And this appears to be off to a good start. Alright, so that's band number 1, which is not going to be long enough, I'm discovering by looking at it. Because at least now I kind of have an idea on what I need to make. So I need a little bit more, and that is a-okay, because I'll just cut off the other side. And then we'll go over a different method here in a second, because this isn't working out so great. It is a lot of trial and error. Like I said, kind of learning as we go. It's not quite wide enough, and it's too wide there. So this is where these tweezers come in I was telling you about. We're going to kind of skinny it up and kind of roll the excess. It's a learning process with a kind of a steep learning curve, but you learn along the way, and you learn little tricks like that to kind of make it all uniform the whole way around. Will it be the same width the whole way around? Absolutely not, as you can see. But this is probably going to be my longest video outside of a live stream. So let me show you a different method here. Remember how we made the tubes by kind of pinching and twisting? We're going to do the same method, and then we're going to use the tweezers to kind of flatten it out. So that's probably long enough, and if it's not, well, I'll just take the excess off. It's not a big deal. We'll put one there at the very, very end, just to kind of cover up all those ridges. See, it gets very sticky, so it's even worse with gloves, because at least with your finger, you can feel it sticking. With a glove, you don't know until you got to remove your hand. And then we do the same trick, kind of squeeze it, make it uniform. And another reason why we wait for this to dry before we put the tubes and stuff on is because I need a firm surface to hold on to while I'm doing this, because otherwise I'll squish it, because there is some pressure needed. I feel like I should mention, these tools that I'm using, you don't have to have these specific tools. You know, it's just, these are just the ones that I use, because I don't have, you know, the traditional or the typical sculpting tools that most people get. So, and this, I think, is going to be plenty long for the next band. This is an optional accessory, that's why we made it, so it can come off. You know, if you don't like the way it looks, you just pitch it in the trash when you're done. Now I need to make the little box that goes on top that the wires that the tubes connect to. I'll put the box just like this. So kind of mash it down a little bit. So try to make it as rectangular as I possibly can. Now the milliput's starting to set a little bit. It's getting kind of sticky and sticking to my tweezers, which, you know, if I knew anything about sculpting, which I know very, 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 very little just from like art classes in high school, I should be dipping these in water. That way they don't stick, but I don't know if milliput has the same properties as, say, you know, red clay or anything like that. So there we go. And let's make some little buttons. So just kind of roll those into a ball and put one button there. I'll turn silver eventually, and we'll do another button just in case. Now for the tubes, which need to be much thinner. I just roll it like you used to do with Play-Doh and kind of thin it out as I go. Which this might be enough for both tubes actually, come to think of it. Alright, let go. See, it's starting to stick to my fingers. So I will cut that right there. And I'll attach it to the front because that's where it looks like it attaches in the movie. I mean, they're not going to be completely perfect, you know. Alright, there's one tube. Just blend it in a little bit, make it look like it goes into the front. And this will be the next tube because he has a series of tubes. So we'll just connect a couple, space them out a little bit so that way they can get painted correctly. And I think that'll be fine, just two. I don't need to do a whole bunch of them because I don't have that skill level yet. So I think that does it for the little cast. I mean, it's not perfect. Based on my skill level, that's about as good as it's going to get. God bless. That's the thing, you got to keep it from falling over because if it falls over and kind of starts to settle and mess a little bit, that's exactly how it's going to dry. All right. Well, I'm going to wait for all that to dry. We'll come back and paint it, and that'll be it. So, probably be another day for me, but, you know, we'll be back in like 3 seconds for you. We're solidified, and we're going to paint. So, I'm going to try and keep the wrap itself as white as possible. Everything else I'm going to go over with a black, and you'll see why here in a minute. Kind of ages things a little bit to give it a black undercoat because it wouldn't make much sense for this to be, you know, clean and new looking when the rest of them's all dirty. I think I'm just going to do red and yellow on one tube, put some silver buttons, do some black bands. And I might do a dry brush with gray over this bandage to make it look dirty. Also, these little tweezers, because you have to compress them, it's good to so I have something I can hold on to. And so let's use one of these, do the black so I don't get it all over the damn place. It'll take a little longer, but you know, I think it'll work out better. You gotta be really careful. There's no really going back. Normally when I'm doing these customizations, I put on some music to listen to, but I can't exactly do that. I wouldn't have much of a way to, you know, edit the music out and y'all still hear me, and I'm not fixing to get copyright claimed at the moment. Typically, I'd also use my little magnifier, but I don't think I need that for this one. So, because I pretty much can see what I'm doing. It's just a matter of controlling. See, I'm getting a little bit of black here and there, but is what it is on that front. We'll just say it adds character. That's what we'll go with. Go ahead into the top ridge of that. That's a bad habit I have, is kind of moving around as I see things that need to be done instead of finishing what I'm doing. There we go. That's one band, as good as it's gonna get anyhow. I would use my brush, but I'm trying to save that for the gray dry brush. I don't want to have to, you know, stop filming and go wash it off, but I will if I absolutely have to, if I get frustrated or impatient, which patience is half the game here. Typically, I'm a very patient person, but it's one of those, you know, you see the finish line, so you go for a sprint, even though you've been running a marathon the whole time. It can bite me in the butt sometimes. Now, this technique I'm doing where I'm putting a black coat on everything that's going to have a different color on it, the first time I tried to customize anything, at least in recent memory, I used to do Nerf guns, because I used to do a lot of cosplay, or costuming, or however you want to say it. I used to cosplay as Booker DeWitt from BioShock Infinite. Not that I necessarily look a whole lot like him, but in my youth I looked more like him than I do now. And they don't exactly, you know, make guns from BioShock, so I'd buy a Nerf gun and I would customize it. And I discovered quickly that paint did not really want to adhere itself to the plastic. And so what I did, I would blast everything with a matte coat of black first. And I found a paint I was using called Rub and Buff worked very well on top of that. See, that's what I'm talking about. I went for a sprint, and now I got a little mark there. And if you're noticing a difference in audio quality, that's because, like I've stated before, my little office area is connected to my kitchen. And when my refrigerator kicks on to run its cycle or whatever it does, my microphone picks that up. So I have to kind of change the voice quality to cover that up because it's very loud and very annoying. If you ever wonder why sometimes I sound different in my videos, that's why. So I'll try to, you know, cut it out as much as I possibly can, but no guarantees. But like I was saying, this Rub and Buff paint that I was using clung really well to the matte finish spray paint, and so it also kind of patinaed it, aged it a little bit, so it wasn't just, you know, silver, gold, bronze, whatever color I was using. And so that's what I'm attempting to do by putting this acrylic on first. Alright, well, I'm getting a little sloppy here. That's the thing, you always gotta come up with a solution. If you make a mistake, either it's a mistake and you just keep rolling with it, or you come up with a solution to fix it. I'm sure you've seen some kind of jumps and edits and all that, because if I did this whole thing as one giant video, it would be well over an hour long, and no one wants to watch that, because most of my viewers, according to YouTube analytics, drop off after about the 3-minute mark anyway, which is really a shame, because I pack a lot of jokes and kind of little Easter eggy things into my videos, so I kind of reward you for watching the whole thing. Do little, memes here and there in the video, like my Hoth Trooper was very funny, I thought, but no one really watched it, because originally when I'd miscounted how many variations there were, I said 12. So I initially spliced in the Sesame Street, pinball, counting to 12. Well, Warner Brothers claimed that, so I had to take it out, and that's why there's that joke in there now in its place, which I thought was even funnier than the original joke, but no one seemed to notice or watch that part, so that's kind of unfortunate. Again, I know this is the long process, but it's a bit easier when you have a fine pinpoint to work with than it is when you're working with a brush, because a brush, you have stray bristles here and there. Even though I still make mistakes using this method, but that's what lets you know it was done by hand. Little mistakes and blemishes. Alright, I think that's pretty good on the black. So I'm going to use more of these to apply the red. So I'm going to do one tube as red, one tube as yellow. Haven't really decided which yet. And then I'm going to go over those buttons in silver, and then do a quick little dry brush in gray on the rest of it, and call it a day. Just gotta wait for it to dry. Oh, the crickets are back. Sure you can hear that. Yeah, I'm gonna do the tubes first. So it's dry now, and I'm gonna start with the yellow. This is actually a much darker yellow than what's showing up on camera, so kind of looks really pale, but trust me, this is what's called daffodil yellow. But it's very similar to the dry brush technique, so I'm trying to get all the excess off. I'm just gonna lightly rub it on. See how it's still letting the black shine through a little bit? I have to put a few coats on to get the desired effect. We'll put a little bit more on. See how it's showing up a little bit better? But you still got that kind of black under it, gives it a little bit of age. Alright, so there's the yellow tube. I got the same stick from yesterday. So, same technique that I showed you already. Soak up some of this red paint here and hit the red tube. And I'll probably hit a little bit of heavy gray up there so it looks like a patch. They're not just disappearing into nowhere. Kind of blend it a little bit. See? There's our tubes. So it has a little bit of character to it. Instead of just being yellow and red, it's got little black undertones. That's how I like it. So, a little bit of gray up there at the top of the tubes. Now they disappear into something. Now we're going to hit the silver on those buttons. A little off-camera strength. The paint pens aren't so bad, but the silver definitely has a strong odor to it, more like a spray paint kind of smell. I'm not sure what does that chemically, but it's there. It'll give you a headache if you're prone to strong smells. There we go. Yeah, we got our silver buttons. They have a little black under them, some character. I'm going to hit the white with some dry brush gray, and that'll be done. And that's the way I like to do it. I like to get the little scraps that are still kind of wet on the brush, so I don't have to keep dipping and spreading around. I find that to be the most effective method of getting this dry brush. Is this the most movie accurate? Absolutely not. Alright, I don't know how much of that's gone. Sometimes if I record too much, these videos become corrupted, so there might be chunks missing. And I think that'll be about it. Alright, and that's it. So I think that looks pretty good. So we'll wait for this to dry and we'll come back. Alright, well, we're at the end here. And there's the two Lukes side by side. So you can see the dry brushing, the red, the color change in the hair, the belt is a lot different. And there's the aged blaster. We put some silver on it, put some black on the handle. And then I removed the number 4 from the lightsaber, painted over it, added some black down there on the grips because there was some mist paint. So I think I improved that. And then I improved that notch because it used to be, have a wedge of plastic in the middle of it, which, clearly isn't supposed to be there. So that's fixed. And then we made the little thing to go on his wrist and arm. So, it's not perfect, but I think it's a nice addition. So we're all done. And that's about it today, folks. All told, this is the 16th video I've had to record, and they're all about anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes apiece. So I'd say total working time, probably about 2.5 hours, 3 hours maybe. That's not including, wait time to dry and then overnight waiting for that to solidify and all that. So I'm very happy with the result. I think Michael is going to be very pleased with it as well. Now that he's done, now I just gotta figure out a way to package them up and send them off. And I guess that's the end of the video. If you liked watching this, then don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Hopefully it's inspired you to maybe, customize some of your own figures, or, just to dabble in it a little bit. That's all I got. So don't forget to go check out and subscribe to Retroblasting, as well as Toy Ploy and Analog Toys. 2 channels definitely worth checking out. But that's all I got. So thanks for stopping by. Till next time, I'm Sal-T, signing off.